Can someone tell me if an ACL or an Achilles has actually ever done anything good? Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, then please do me a favour and hit that subscribe button. So, not a video I like to make, gonna make it quick, but I'm sure we all know by now. Couple of injuries to talk about. I say couple of injuries, couple of incidents, because one of the injuries, it was reported that Dwan Jones was carted off the field today at practice. Your initial thought, especially after yesterday, is, oh no. Then it was reported he was actually in the front of the cart, so, not quite as bad. I obviously posted, hopefully, I don't think I've ever wanted someone to just need a shit more in my life. Turns out that might have been what it was. He's not actually injured. They're calling it heat, which I'm sure is the actual reason. So, good to take precaution, of course. It was very hot today, so they obviously saw some signs of fatigue and thought, they'll get ahead of it and take some precaution. But I'm still convinced he was just going for a shit. But unfortunately, that's the good news. The bad news, as I said, I'm sure everyone knows by now. Martin Emerson, who yesterday in practice on Tuesday went down with a lower leg injury, contact injury, which of course, anyone that's been around any sport for any period of time knows that when you hear that, that's not good. That is automatically, your mind goes to ACL or Achilles. Emerson was dealing with some calf problems in OTAs, has been dealing with that during the off season. So my initial thought went to Achilles, because it seems to be that in every one of these cases, with these players tearing their Achilles, they were previously dealing with calf problems, which, I'm not a doctor by any means, not going to claim to be, probably am wrong, but does make me think, does that not maybe mean that this could be more preventable? I don't know, but it does seem to be that, the calf problem and correlation to Achilles tears is pretty much 100% with these guys. But yeah, so that's obviously where our minds went to. Did not look good. He was in a lot of pain, got carted off, couldn't put any weight on it. Without even being told, we knew that he was pretty much more than likely done for the season already. And reported today what we all kind of knew, but feared that, yes, he has ruptured his Achilles and will, of course, miss the entirety of the 2025 season. First and foremost, thoughts are, of course, with Martin Emerson. To suffer any injury at this point sucks, especially a season-ending injury before you've even got into pre-season, before you've even had a chance to go out there and when there's live bullets and actually take a snap in at least a pre-season game, let alone an NFL game. So absolutely sucks for him just from that prospect and that outlook. I mean, sports players, athletes, they want to play. That it's their passion. That's what they want to do. I know most of us probably don't enjoy our jobs, but we would probably enjoy our jobs if we were NFL players. These guys don't want to be hurt as much as some people, I think, seem to think that they do with the complaints about injury prone stuff. These guys don't want to be hurt. They want to be out there playing. So that's the initial kind of blow for Emerson. On top of that just makes this even more kind of gut-wrenching, for anyone that's a fan of Emerson, is that this was a contract year for him. This was the last year of his rookie deal. He wasn't a first-round pick. He didn't have any, he has no fifth-year option or anything like that. This was the last year of his contract year. If you're ever going to be motivated to put good tape out there and play well, it's going to be in a contract year. This is your chance to go and earn generational wealth for you and your family, whether that was here, at the Cleveland Browns or somewhere else. Just to put good tape out in a contract year is massive, and he now will have no chance of doing that. That is millions and millions of dollars that he has now missed out on. That's add that on top of the fact that he can't play his favorite sport for the whole season. That's a big blow. heartbreaking, to be honest. As I said, don't get me wrong, these guys do okay for money, but there's money and there's generational wealth for your family that he's potentially missed out on. Hopefully that's not the case, of course. Hopefully he can bounce back from this, go have a good year. Hopefully he's brought back here, which I'll get into afterwards, what down the future, but hopefully he can come back from this and go and earn money that he's now potentially lost because of this injury in a contract year. So it really does suck. What does it mean for the Browns? Of course, this was their starting outside corner alongside Denzel Ward, of course. The three amigos, Denzel Ward, Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome, they are no more this year in what will be the last year. That these guys had a chance to play with each other more likely, which although if there was ever a scenario that, they could play with each other one more year, this was the only way it could happen. Obviously that being next year. But yeah, these three guys that have played with each other for 3 years now, they're no longer going to be able to be the trio that they were. So what do the Browns do to address this loss? The most, I suppose, common answer to that would be to move Greg Newsome to the outside. Based on what we've seen already in training camp, that seems to be what they're doing. Move Greg Newsome to the outside. He can play the outside. In some kind of sick, twisted way, Greg Newsome got what he always wanted, and that is to play on the outside. We all know that outside corners earn a lot more money than slot guys, and this is a contract year for Greg Newsome as well. So, of course, he is going to absolutely hate to see his teammate, his friend, tear his Achilles and be injured. But in the back of his head, he is going to think this is a good opportunity for me. I can now go put tape as an outside corner, as a true core lockdown outside corner, and earn myself a payday. So in some sick, twisted way, as I said, this has actually kind of worked out quite well for Greg Newsome. He's probably going to go play. I say probably, he will go and play in Martin Emerson's role. He will be that other outside corner alongside Denzel Ward, which is fine. We saw Greg Newsome as a rookie play on the outside and was good. He's not just been a slot corner. Of course, that's the predominantly been his role with the current construction of those three guys. But he has played. He does still play some snaps on the outside. He's more than capable of playing on the outside, and I'm confident that he'll put tape and put the film out that he can do that this year. So I don't think it's going to be the biggest loss, not to put it, it's a big loss, but it's not Denzel Ward, touch wood, getting injured, if you know what I mean. It's not, oh fuck, now this corner room is not good. There's ways you can work around it, and that's obviously putting Greg Newsome on the outside, which we all wanted Greg Newsome to be, everyone wanted Greg Newsome to be traded this offseason. I think even last offseason, and this just shows you that the advantages of keeping depth and keeping these guys in some cases, that now, of course, we have the luxury of being able to bring in Greg Newsome to fill that role. That obviously leaves a spot for the slot. I would personally like one of the young guys to take that role and run with it, and maybe show long-term potential, and they can be the long-term slot corner. Because as I said, it's going to be unlikely that we see Greg Newsome, Martin Emerson, and Denzel Ward here next year. So Cam Mitchell or Miles Harden, if they can come out and take that role and show, as I said, long-term potential, then that would be the best case scenario. Cam Mitchell, in some kind of twisted fate, literally got an interception, I think, about 10 minutes after Martin Emerson was carted off. Miles Harden, who's not been at practice the last few days for unknown reasons initially, which was a bit concerning, but it's been reported it was actually for personal reasons. So obviously not great. Whatever personal reasons he's dealing with, hopefully he's okay, or his family are okay, or whatever. But good news in a sense of it's not an injury that he's dealing with, so he should be back out there when he's ready. So yeah, I'd rather one of those two guys can take that role, but I do think Nick Needham is probably going to start in that role to begin with. He just offers a lot more experience, someone that's played over 60 games in the NFL. Similar to kind of a lot of the guys in that room, it's someone that's played on the outside, played in the slot, He's play. I think he's even played some safety. So he's moved around. He's got experience out there, and someone that I think will come in and play that slot role, be that starting slot initially. But as I said, I would like to see in a best case scenario that obviously one of Cam Mitchell or Miles Harden can win that job, and as I said, show long-term potential, long-term promise. That would be the best case. So it sucks. Martin Emerson had a bit of a down year last year, shall we say. He was eager to bounce back. It was one of the last things he said in the last interview he did of how much he wanted to bounce back and how he was putting the work in to do that. I think it was Myles Garrett that even highlighted him as someone that he thinks is going to have a bounce back season, and someone that we've seen when he's at his best is a true lockdown corner. This was a baby Ramsey. This was someone that was a tall guy and was locking. I don't think I've seen him matched up with a big receiver and not locked them up. He truly is a really good corner. So this is a big loss. But it's just thankful. It's thankfully trying to get my words out. Thankfully that the Browns. This is one of the position groups that the Browns do have depth in. Don't get me wrong. The way that this roster is going, over the next few years, the way this room is, they are going to have to address this depth again in the next few years. But this is the kind of benefit of investing in cornerback depth the last few years throughout the draft. I've seen some hilarious tweets of people saying, this just shows you how terribly run they are because they have no cornerback depth. They didn't draft a corner this year. This is the first year under this regime where they haven't drafted a defensive back. So, as I said, they've already drafted the depth, and that's those guys that we're seeing, the Cam Mitchells, the Greg Newsomes, the Miles Hardens, and obviously bringing in Nick Needham as well. So it's a loss, but I think the Browns can, manage, and I expect the defensive line to be the best unit on this team anyway. If that is the case, they're going to help out whoever's back there anyway. So it sucks, of course. My thoughts are with Emerson, but it could be worse, shall we say? And bloody touch wood, it doesn't get worse. But finally, just going forward in the future, what does this mean for Emerson? Of course, as I said, this is a contract year, so this sucks. Absolutely sucks for him, missing out on millions of dollars. He's done it, obviously, rehab and more than likely re-sign with the Browns. It would be very weird for someone to, rehab their injury and go sign a minimum deal somewhere else. He will sign a prove it year deal with the Browns next off season, and get a chance to, have that contract year again, essentially, and go and try and prove that he deserves a long-term contract. And hopefully he can do that. An Achilles tear, these used to be career enders in some cases, in some sports. Thankfully, with the advancement in science and medical science, that's not as much the case nowadays. But one of the most athletic, physically demanding positions in the sport, cornerback, someone that never really wasn't the fastest to begin with, shall we say. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be a long road for him to come back from. But that doesn't mean that he can't do it. So hopefully he can, come back next year, have a great year for the Browns, and sign a long-term contract and play many more years here. But touch wood, we don't see any more injuries. We are going to see more injuries. It's the NFL. Stefanski, for the first time ever, has actually started to allow tackling to the ground. Maybe he saw the Achilles injury and thought, look, if we're going to have non-contact injuries anyway, we might as well be doing this properly in practice and tackling properly. So, it's the NFL. We have to get to week one without, hopefully, half of your best players going down. That's just how it is. For me, let's just wrap Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett in bubble wrap and put them on ice until September and go from there, because they're ready for week one. But that would do it for me today, guys. As I said, just obviously wanted to talk about the injury. It sucks, but what can you do? It's the NFL. I'll be talking way more about training camp, of course, the quarterback battle, all of that good stuff. The rest of this week going forward. So make sure, if you're not, subscribe. But as well, like this video. That is massive. We all know how the algorithm works on any of these social media channels, especially YouTube. You can also check the links in the description to see where you can follow and interact with me on social media if that's something you want to do. And as always, I'm trying to build a community of Cleveland Browns fans, and even if that means I only get to talk to one fan a day, I'm happy because I'm talking Browns football with the best fan base in the world. Thanks again for watching, guys. Have an amazing rest of the week. Please stay healthy, Browns. But most importantly, go Browns.